Now, if you've been watching my videos for a couple of years, you might remember an episode that I dropped quite a bit back where I covered the original Toy Biz Resident Evil figures. I made a documentary all about them just because I was compelled to. And I not only talked about the toys, but I also talked about toys that came out around that era, the vibe at the time, the games that came out at the time, and my personal experience of them. And it's an episode that I look back now and I'm still pretty fond of. There's lots of things that made it a really fun episode to shoot. Not only were the figures awesome and I liked the way that I lit it, looking all cinematic and stuff, but also the backdrops and the dioramas and the scenery that I made to showcase the toys. And although it was a really fun video to shoot because I'm filming toys that I've got a lot of connection to and I'm lighting them good and I'm using the gimbal and getting some real nice shots, it was those backdrops and working on them that really made that whole project a real joy to create. So much so that like a week after I dropped that documentary, I then made a making of episode talking all about how I made all the dioramas for it. And even though I've not done anything like that since then, for a long time now I've really had the urge to do it. And now that I've got the studio, obviously I've got the space to create that stuff more regularly. I've shot many toys in this building, but it's always been with like the regular studio backdrop, and moving forward I really want to try and incorporate more dioramas and sets around my toys and the showcase shots that I do, almost creating like a little modular world for them all to exist in, like a slime city. So recently, between all the toy making stuff and the other projects that I've got going on, that's something else that I've started doing. And so far, thanks to a brand new awesome piece of equipment that I've acquired for the studio, it's been going really well. Let me show you what I've been up to. Oi! Come on. So what I've got here is a 20-watt S1 laser cutter that's been very kindly gifted to me by Xtool. A brand new machine that's going to be an amazing addition to the studio moving forward and vital in helping me create all of these toy showcase dioramas that I've got planned. Now this thing, as you just saw, came in a huge box, was packaged insanely well with straps and reinforced card and foam, which to me is obviously a good sign of a company that cares a lot about their product. And although by the time that I got around to looking at this, it was late on in the evening because I'd been working on the Pogman video all day, I was real eager to at least get it all unboxed and set up. Now I'll be honest, I'd never really used a laser cutter before this. It's a technology that I was obviously very interested in and I was real eager to learn and utilise, but it's not one that I knew my way around or anything like that, so a lot of the tech and the accessories that this machine came with looked very alien to me, and while I was setting it up I spent a lot of time going through the user manual and watching YouTube tutorials and just trying to familiarise myself with everything as much as possible, because I wanted to make sure that I set up everything perfectly so that I wouldn't run into any problems when I started actually trying to use it. One thing I did know though, which is kind of a no-brainer, is that laser cutters when not used safely can be very dangerous. You're basically running a machine that burns through any material that you put in front of it with a high-powered laser beam. They also kick out a lot of smoke and fumes, so you have to fit this extractor pipe to the back and make sure you've got proper ventilation so all that smog's got somewhere to go. As well as the S1 as well, Xtool also sent me the new Air Assist set, which as far as I can tell, obviously as you know I'm no expert at this, I'm just learning and reading as I go, also helps with airflow and reduces the chance of burning too when you're working with like more combustible materials, wood and card and that kind of thing. So that's something that was also very much appreciated too, because I'm not gonna lie, with me having such little experience of these things beforehand, I can't say that I wasn't just a little bit shook to use it. So as far as I'm aware, I've got this thing all set up now, and I didn't want to have a repeater when I tried to get my resin casting machine working, my air compressor and my degassing chamber and all that stuff. I didn't want to repeat of that, so I basically like thoroughly read the instructions, watched lots of tutorials on this thing and made sure like everything was set up properly before I even thought about turning it on. Now this machine, the S1, does actually come with like a set of sample materials that you can use. And in here, I've got like a piece of slate, there's some plastic tags and stuff, there's a nice piece of wood, there's some leather, there's some vinyl, a piece of acrylic and all that stuff. But I don't want to start cutting into any of this yet because I don't want to ruin any of it while I'm just like trying to get it working. So what I've got is just a piece of scrap board. This is just at the back of a picture frame. I sometimes keep these when like picture frames break and things. A, because I'm a bit of a hoarder, and two, because you can break this stuff up and use it as like little pieces of concrete and stuff on dioramas and terrain for miniatures and toys and stuff. So I'm gonna try and cut into this. So now, with the machine all set up and my material ready, and me confident that I kinda knew what I was doing, it was off to the laptop and the iPad to get my very first ever image ready for some laser cutting. So what I've done here is I've downloaded a program that's actually Xtool's proprietary software called Xtool Creative Space. There's another one that you can use called Lightburn that's also used for laser cutters and stuff, but I thought with me using an Xtool product, I might as well use their own software for it. So what I've done is I've got my logo and I've drawn around it. Now this is probably not the most simple logo to start with, but I didn't want to like cut out a heart or a star or some kind of shape that I'm never going to use or anything like that. I thought I'll actually print something out that I might even use for something. So I'm going to start with my logo. So what I did is I just saved this as a PNG and then sent it to my laptop and brought it up in this software, just imported it, very simple. And like I've said a few times now, like I've never done anything like this before. I really didn't know what to expect, but so far it's been surprisingly simple. I'm waiting for something to mess up. And as you'll be able to see now on the screen record, I've got my logo here, and that's actually going to be like engraved, like carved, etched, and then I've put an outline around it, and that's actually where it's going to be cut. I've lined up my laser, that's something else that you have to do. I also had to connect this via Wi-Fi to the machine, but it's all worked so far. It's all been okay. So yeah, one more final check and then we'll start actually trying to cut something out. What's also in here as well, and I can't show you it now on camera because I've actually placed it in already, but there's this thing called the honeycomb panel, and it just helps you line everything up a lot better when it's inside. The machine does come with these prisms that you can lay down and lay your material on top of it and stuff, and they do work, but this is like an extra piece you can buy that Xtool sent me, this honeycomb panel. It does raise your bed up a little bit, which means that you can't cut through material that's thicker than you normally could, but for the sake of it lining everything up so nice, it doesn't matter to me. Also, I'm not trying to cut through anything too thick, so yeah, if I want to cut through something that's like between 3 and 5 mil, that's perfect, and that's all I'm ever going to need it for. It also comes with these little tabs which helps you line and lock your material up perfectly. And the way that it works is wherever I move this laser to here by hand, that then shows up in the software and it makes it so I know exactly where I'm going to be cutting. So as you can see, it started doing its thing, and what I'm doing here is just hovering over the emergency stop button. So if anything happens that looks weird or not right, or if I see anything smoking a bit too much, or I see a flame or anything like that, I can quickly just hit it off. Now I have got something as well that Xtool sent me to like help prevent any fire hazards or anything like that, but I'm going to talk about that towards the end of the video because I'm not going to get to set that up in this one, but yeah, I'll talk about it a bit later. But it looks really good. I can already see my logo getting imprinted onto the board and things. This is really exciting. So I'm going to go on record saying that that came out close to perfect. If I did it again, I'd probably engrave it a little bit deeper just so it's a little bit more visible. But other than that, it's like very, very good. It came out nice first try. And although, like I said, this is a really simple thing to cut out, what gets me excited, what gets me buzzing and gassed is the potential that this machine has to create great things for projects moving forward. I can do merch, I can do diorama pieces, I can do all sorts, all now because I've got this machine. And the fact that, like I said, it worked first time pretty much without hitting any snags is the thing that really gets me looking forward to all the stuff that I'm going to be able to use this for in the future. Like I said, the potential now is crazy. Right, so now that I'd got something cut out and I kind of knew what I was doing and I'd like set myself on this path to be able to laser cut pretty much anything that I wanted, it was time to do something proper. Because like I said in the intro, I got this machine so that I could create dioramas and set pieces and up my toy photography game. So although I didn't want to like cut out a whole cityscape and start something ginormous, I at least wanted to create something. Like something that was remotely usable. So over the next few days with my newfound knowledge of how to use this Xtool, or like the limited amount of knowledge that I had, that's exactly what I started doing. So what I decided was, rather than try and do anything too grandiose right off the bat, I'd create something a bit more low-key, still cool, but something that'd help me test the capabilities of the machine a little bit more, and also leave me with something that I could use as a display stand. I could also possibly even integrate it into something bigger later on. So on my iPad, I drew out a real simple layout of a kind of futuristic cyberpunk style spaceship doorway alcove kind of thing. I recently started playing the Dead Space remake as well, so I thought it'd be cool to create something a little bit inspired by that, also a little bit alien and Star Warsy. I've also been listening to the new Cyberpunk audiobook, which has also got that kind of sci-fi aesthetic but a bit more street and ghetto, so basically something inspired by all that kind of stuff, but obviously with my own Slimehouse twist. Now at this point, I weren't really sure if this were even going to work, and if the idea that I'd got in my head was possible, so rather than trying to do something too complex, I just tried to keep it simple and basic, and from there, it was back to the Creative Space software so I could start trying to actually get it cut out. Now the first one that I did was again just on a piece of scrap wood, and although I cut it out fine and the settings were all okay, I'd measured it wrong and cut it out way too small. As you know, if you watch my videos, all of my action figures scale around 5 inches, so any diorama stuff that I create basically has to be like Doll's House scale. And this had cut out to a scale more of like a 3 3/4 Star Wars kind of figure, and although I want this to look a bit Star Wars, I want it to be a lot bigger than their 3.75 toys. Now though, hoping that all my settings were dialed in, I grabbed another piece of scrapboard, which I actually scrounged out of a skip the night before on my way home from the shop. I just saw it sticking out and thought that it looked perfect, so once I'd cut it down to size and got it all lined up in the X-Tool, it was time to have another go at the cut, only this time scaling things a lot bigger.
Welcome to the Craftman Show. My name is your host, the Craftman. Now, the Craftman. In today's video, we look at a
So it's currently cutting out now, and without speaking too soon, it looks like it's carving through the laminate board nicely. This board as well that I found in the skip last night has a really nice finish to it. It looks like it's wood grain, but it's actually not, it's smooth because I did a little test spraying it, and it's got a really nice finish. So in terms of the cutting, it says that it's got about 12 minutes left, and I don't want to get too excited too quick, but yeah, looks like it's working a treat, so I'm very happy. So that first cut was successful, came out brilliant, perfectly scaled, and it cut through the laminate board without any problems. So now that I knew that everything was okay, I got some more of that laminate board measured up and cut. Thankfully, I got quite a big piece out of the skip, so I had a lot to work with. And now that I knew that everything was on track, it was back to the software, so I could get the rest of the elements of the diorama loaded up and started getting everything else cut out. Also, what I really like about this software and just laser cutting in general is that not only can you make sure you get all your angles perfect and everything cut out exactly the way that you want them, but you can also score and engrave areas too, so I could get some perfect panel lines and have everything looking futuristic and utilitarian, exactly the look that I want for this set piece, and no doubt many more in the future. Now by this point, I'd cut out everything I needed in the laminate board, but there were a lot of blank areas that I felt needed more details, more paneling and that kind of thing, so using the X-Tool software directly this time, I drew a bunch of shapes, then added round edge borders around them, and then used that shape to then cut into some plastic card that I'd got left over from the Big Bot Bash earlier this year. Now I did plan on using this on my robot, but it was a bit hard to cut and sand, not very durable. In retrospect, I should have gone with styrene. Luckily though, this was perfect for laser cutting, and I managed to get a bunch of little shapes cut out, which meant that I had lots to play with and arrange on the diorama, and also gave me a nice bit of variation in thicknesses as well, so that everything didn't look the same. So this is what I've come up with. It's pretty simple, there's no heavy geometry or anything going on like that, it's not too complex, but I'm happy with it. As my first thing that I've cut out on an X-Tool using different materials and different thicknesses and stuff, I think it's turned out pretty good. What, brother? Mate! This is like the 4th time I've tried to do this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and glue it together, get it painted and stuff, and yeah, let's see how realistic we can make it look. Full disclaimer before I go on, before anybody says anything, I don't ever have the cat in here when I'm doing any cutting or spraying or anything like that, and he's also got a perfectly good house to hang out in, but for some reason recently he wants to spend as much time with me in the studio as possible, and anybody that's got a cat will tell you that no matter what you try and do or what you try and tell them, they just do what they want and go where they want. So if anybody was worried, just to let you know, I love this guy more than life itself, and I'd never have him in here when I'm doing anything dangerous. So now that I got everything cut out and arranged, it was time to start sticking it all down and gluing it together. And this is when I realised that I should have probably engraved and scored some marker lines to line everything up first, because it would have made this part of the build so much easier. And because I'd not done that, I had to measure it all out meticulously by hand and try to make sure that I got everything marked up exactly where it needed to be, because once you glue it together, that's it. You can't be adjusting it ever so slightly. Once it's down, it's down. I also, just to make my life more difficult for some reason, decided to challenge myself a little bit with the structure of this thing and not just have it like a box shape in the traditional style of like a book nook. I wanted it to instead fan out a little bit and feel more like a little display alcove kind of thing, which again didn't make things easier because it meant that I had to set it out in a very specific angle to work. So I'll be honest, this was really difficult for me to get right and work out and figure out because my brain just doesn't work like that, and I'll definitely make sure that next time I build something like this, I remember to add myself some marker lines in the cutting stage. But it's all good learning. These kind of mistakes, even though they're a bit annoying at the time, they're not the end of the world, and it just means that I'll learn what not to do next time. So after I'd got it stuck down and it was all looking okay, the next thing that I did was hit it with a couple of layers of filler primer spray paint. I wanted the smaller thin plastic hard panels that I'd cut out to look like they were vacuum foamed and cast as part of the larger thicker ones, and doing this made them all look like one. Now I did almost want to try and kind of have this look for the bigger laminated board panels as well, but something that I didn't take into account with them is that the back of the board is almost like corrugated textured, so there was always like a slight little bit of space where the two pieces that were glued together wouldn't quite meet perfectly. And what some people might have done here is get some filler putty and put it in really neat and sanded it, but for the sake of how long I had left to spend on this episode, because I needed to get the video out, and also the fact that I didn't need anything to look too clean, I decided to use some liquid green stuff to gunk everything up and look like rust and dirt and fill them all in that way. I also dabbed across this whole thing as well with a bit of sponge, just to give it a bit of an underrust texture, so that when I painted everything, gunk wasn't just around the edges and smooth on the surface. As I just said as well, I was kinda on a time limit when I was making this thing, and I couldn't be waiting hours and hours for each layer to dry. Luckily though, my dad recently found this while out doing what he does at work, like an old school little furnace heater, and I'm not sure what its actual function is, but it gets real warm real quick and was great for helping me speed up this project's drying times. And once that was all done and everything was nice and dry and fixed, I went back again and sprayed the whole thing with a nice matte khaki green coloured spray paint. So the next bit I didn't really capture too much of on camera, but I basically sprayed it again from a high up angle with a kind of skeleton bone kind of colour, leaving me with a nice sci-fi looking dirty cream base, which I then added more crusty rust texture paint on top of. Now all of the techniques that I used on this here are not really anything special, it's all pretty standard stuff. Texture paint, washes, dry brushing, a bit of rust and chipping and that kind of thing. So rather than me go through my entire painting process, I wanted to talk more about my theory behind why this looks the way that it does, why I choose to paint my dioramas and set pieces this way, because as you can probably tell, they look quite a bit different aesthetically to the action figures that I paint when I make them. And there's a reason for this, well, a few reasons. So when I paint my action figures, I always spend a long time trying to get the colours on them to look bold and solid, with nice sharp cutting lines and that kind of thing, basically trying to replicate what a plastic action figure would look like. But when it comes to these kind of backgrounds, I always spend a lot of time working to make them look more hyper-realistic, adding tones, more detail and textures and highlights, and the reason for that is, as I'm sure you're aware, I'm a big fan of animation, both Saturday morning cartoons and then more adult-orientated stuff. I love it all, from Ninja Turtles to Ralph Bakshi. And something that's always a constant in pretty much all of those animations, whether it's old or new, is that generally anything in the scene that's moving is always coloured pretty basic. Obviously because they have to animate every single frame of them moving and they can't be doing heavy amounts of shading and lighting on every frame, but the backgrounds are always much more refined and painted, not only because they're obviously set pieces that don't have to really move, but also because it helps the animation stand out against them. And I honestly love these backgrounds, they're one of my favourite art forms that I feel go largely unnoticed, and obviously there's a reason for that because like I said, they're not supposed to stand out. But I just think that they look so beautiful, and that's the reason why when I do backdrops I do them this way. And not only that, I do really genuinely enjoy this style of painting and crafting, so this really allows me to satisfy that urge and utilise a bunch of skills and mediums that I don't ever really have an excuse to do and keep it work and Slimehouse related. So once all the painting and the weathering were done, the last thing to do was just add all the little fine details, the little cherries on top that just make a diorama feel complete. So the first thing that I did was pull out one of the tanks that I got given to me by Pez at Rubicon Models. You might remember I got these at the UK Games Expo, and I do plan on building a small miniature scale Rambo diorama with these at some point, but for now I just needed the decals out of them. These stickers are perfect for adding little bits of text and logos and numbers to dioramas like this. Also shouts to my friend Luke that was here at the time for helping me put these down neat, because I haven't used decals for years and I didn't want to mess them up, so I let him do the first one just because he's a lot better at it than I am. After that I got the doors sprayed, which I'd masked off so I could give them some nice dangerous looking hazard stripes, and then finished the whole thing off with some tiny little bits of scrappy graffiti and tagging and some extra little tiny additions just to make the whole thing feel complete and finished. So before I show you the finished diorama piece that I created, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Xtool machine first and like my first impressions of it after using it for a few days. And right off the bat, I'm very happy with it. I think it's got so much potential, like I keep saying. I've got so many ideas. My head is just spinning now with all of the stuff that I'll be able to create with this. There's some stuff that I've not been able to do on it yet. There's some settings that I've not quite dialed in right, things that I've got to work on, things that worked a little bit too good. Like sometimes I would cut stuff out and it burnt the wood a little bit, which is fine for me because I'm painting it. But if I wasn't painting it, then I wouldn't want that. So there's lots of little settings in the software and that kind of thing that I've just got to like work out. And like I said, I've only been using this for a few days, but so far, first impressions, I'm really happy with it and I can't wait to see where I'm going to go with it. Obviously, like I keep saying, I want to create dioramas with it and stuff, but then there's also other ideas that I'm thinking about, like merchandise. Also, a few weeks ago, I was saying how I would like to create my own giant version of an original OG Space Marine Dreadnought, and that's something that I can probably do now with that. Like, I wouldn't have been able to 3D print all the base for it and stuff because I don't have a filament printer, but I could definitely probably cut out like the main frame of it on the Xtool cutter, cut that out of plastic card and then 3D prints on top of that. So that's something else that I've now got in my head thinking about. I've also been sent this, which is the Xtool Fire Safety Set. This came when they sent me all the other stuff, and I've not had a chance to check this out yet and look at installing it, but basically this is just something else that like helps with fire safety and things. It connects to it with sensors. I've got to work out how they fit to it and things, and then if it ever like senses any kind of flame in there, then it instantly like floods the whole thing with CO2 gas. So yeah, just another thing that keeps it nice and safe, which I'm all about in this studio because yeah, I don't want to be burning this place down anytime soon. So massive shouts to Xtool for that, and I'll probably get to fitting that in like in a future episode and that kind of thing. One step at a time here at Slimehouse. One step at a time. But like I've said, very happy with the machine, very inspired by it, very excited to see where I'm going to go with it. So definitely going to be seeing a lot of me using this thing in future projects moving forward. If you're interested in getting the Xtool for yourself, for your studio, for your workshop, whatever, then I will put the links down in the description so that you can check it out. All the information about my affiliation with Xtool and everything will all be down in the description as well. But without further ado, let me show you what I created on the Xtool. Let me show you my first ever thing that I've created on my Xtool machine. So here it is, and I didn't want to do no big giant reveal or anything like that because I didn't think it needed it. This was all about me learning the equipment and just trying to create something, and creating something is what I feel like I did. Now, I didn't have any like specific idea of what this might be in my head or anything like that. This could be like a spaceship door. This could be a cyberpunk noodle bar. You could go in there and it could be like anything. It could be a shop, it could be a tattoo parlor, who knows? It could exist in like some cyberpunk city, or it could be on a spaceship. I also like the idea of it being like an abandoned spaceship. I grew up around a lot of abandoned buildings and that kind of thing, taking photos of street art and stuff. And I really like the idea of like in space there could be abandoned spaceships that you could just go and explore. They wouldn't necessarily be full of aliens or anything dangerous or anything like that. Just a cool like urban exploring little adventure that you could go on where you just go and explore an old abandoned spaceship. So maybe it's one of them. In terms of how it scales up with the figures that I create, I've got the Hornier from Arena, which I created like, I don't know, about 8 months ago or something like that. And then I've got Turgo, who is like kind of famous on this channel. If you know Turgo, then you know. But both of them size up really nicely in it. And what I've got here basically is like a nice little display stand that I can have on my shelf with my figures in. And this might also be something that I can look into doing more of in the future. Like just a little cool display stand, a little aesthetic, a little thing, a little look into the world and that vibe of that figure that it can just stand in. I don't know, let's see how we go with it. But I'm really happy with it. I think it came out awesome. I really like how all the little details came out, the little bits of Chinese and Japanese writing, the stickers, the paste ups, the dripping graffiti. All those little things that really help like make a world feel lived in. But I'd love to know if you've got any ideas or any little set pieces that I could create, any dioramas, any vibes, any aesthetics, any styles that you think would work well. Please let me know them down in the comments below, because I always love to hear your ideas, and quite often I get comments that like really spark me to want to create something. If you enjoyed this video today, as always, don't forget to give it a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and binge the back catalogue. I'm Theo Kane, this is Slimehouse TV. I do videos here every single week, and the way that I'm able to do that is via my Patreon. So if you want to help support this channel, you want to help support what I'm doing, the toy making, the toy reviews, the toy showcasing, the diorama builds, all that, then head over to patreon.com/SlimehouseTV. All the money that's generated on there all helps me keep this channel going, and also helps me make Slimehouse and this studio and these projects bigger and better than ever. I've got some other really cool episodes lined up in the future, all stuff that I can't wait to talk about, can't wait to showcase, can't wait to show you, and I hope to catch you in those episodes. But until then, I'm Theo Kane, this is Slimehouse TV, and I'm gone. Pow!